Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to say one thing about abuse and neglect. It's against the law, and one of my biggest pet peeves is that if you abuse a dog or a cat, you get charged and you get fined. If you abuse a horse, you get rewarded by taking the horse to auction and getting money by selling it for meat. Something is wrong with that picture. If you're breaking the law, you should be fined and charged, and that's the end of that. I mean, if we end horse slaughter, we will not have as many horses, because we will not have people who are irresponsible breeding horses knowing that they can get rid of them any time of the day or night by selling them for meat. You know, the greatest breeders in the country, the Hancocks, who bred 3 Kentucky Derby winners, are totally against horse slaughter. It's ruining the sport. And I think people who are serious about what they do with horses will not tolerate it. It's just this fringe group, this small group of special interests that want horse slaughter, and it's not, they just can't have it anymore. And one of the reasons this summit is so important is because of what could happen in New Mexico. We have got to stop slaughter from happening there. We have to prevent that plant from opening. So without further ado, I want to introduce our first speakers. How do I introduce Victoria McCullough? My God. She is the owner of Chesapeake Petroleum, but she's also a horse rescuer. She's also an amateur rider, but she's also, what can I say, a world traveler and a person of influence who has gone behind the scenes and reached the top people in our government to try to end horse slaughter. And we're talking about the Secretary of Agriculture, we're talking about the Chancellor of Germany, we're talking about members of the House of Lords. So she's going to speak about what's been going on, and she's with one of my favorite politicians, Senator Joseph Abruzzo of Florida. He's a huge advocate for horses. The two of them are responsible for passing the Equine Protection Law of 2008 in Florida, and I'm going to introduce them right now because what they have to say is news-breaking and of great importance. Thank you, guys.
Good morning. I can't think of a better place I'd rather be right now than right here. It's one of my favorite places. My mother lived here in the Adirondacks in Lake George from 1972 to 2007 to her death, and this is a very special place for me. My relationship with Susan was groundbreaking because last year when I came to this summit, I didn't quite know what to expect. I had my own, we all have our own little piece of this puzzle. And when I came to this summit, last year was really, it was monumental for us because I learned that each one in this room had the answer. It's like if you're a great trial attorney and you need the body of evidence. A body of evidence to win this was in the room. And nobody in our fight to end this has ever gone to a great lobbyist. No one has ever sought, they're expensive and we know that, but in my experience in politics, obviously owning a petroleum company and being a successful one, we have friends. All petroleum companies have friends. So I took advantage of that and I said, this is great. But my favorite politician in the entire world is at my left. And the reason that is because I was with him when he was elected. We've been friends for almost 10 years. And he was elected because he had always inside him this voice to answer for animals and to be accountable, to be responsible. We put beautiful flyers together with dogs and horses, and Representative Abruzzo at that time was elected because he had a beautiful, colorful flyer saying, I will work to give animals a voice. Then Representative Abruzzo passed in 2010 the Equine Protection Bill, and we crisscrossed the state, and we worked with the cattlemen, which was the first obstacle. The Cattlemen's Association came on board with us, and we found a way. We had a unanimous approval at all 3 readings, Farm Bureau, everyone. And we found the way to do that is to use logic, but to come to terms, meet them. I called Representative Abruzzo at the time and said, I'm in Marion County in Ocala with 41 cattlemen, and they all have guns at the table. It was sort of like an identification card. It was like you and I use our napkin, well, they put their guns down. But the truth is they came on our side, and they've been on our side ever since. So the answer is getting to these people and finding some way to meet and to compromise, and not bully them, not attack them, but find the way that you and I can sit in a room and find a way to work together. Because we don't all agree. But Senator Abruzzo had a very aggressive campaign when he was the representative running for Senate, and it was legendary. It was one of the most expensive campaigns in Florida to work, and he was very successful. One of the reasons he is so successful is he finds the bridge in the middle. He works across party lines, and he and I have come together to do some amazing things. Just last week, the previous week, they just passed the bill to stop dyeing animals at Easter. The state of Florida has banned dyeing any chickens and bunnies and all those ridiculous things that we do. He also just passed the Transparency Act, which is tremendous. It's seeking to give animal shelters how many they take in and how many they kill. It gives us an ability of responsibility and accountability, and that's Senator Abruzzo. So last year, Susan gave me the body of evidence I needed. Paula Bacon and her tremendous advocacy, and taking a government in a state and whipping the hell out of it and saying that's it, we're going to fight. And John Holland with his evidence. Joanne Norval with a beautiful, beautiful aspect of how many thoroughbreds are being killed. If you're sitting in a room and you see all these things, you go, okay, here's the body of evidence in one place, and let's put it together. I called Senator Abruzzo and said, let's go to D.C. We met Tony Podesta, the best lobbyist in the country, and he was fantastic. They didn't know what to charge us because we don't benefit. We're the only client he's ever had that doesn't financially benefit. We just go to sleep at night. It was an interesting complex for him. First he had one price, Joe's negotiating, then he had another price, and then he had another price, and then he was like, oh, what the hell, I don't care, I'll help you no matter what. It was just great, because he was really confounded. And we said to him, Senator Abruzzo, of course, may lobby federally. So I have hired Senator Abruzzo to lobby federally for us. And Senator Abruzzo, and that's exactly what we do. We open the doorways, whether it's the Clinton Foundation, whatever it is we do together. Tony Podesta will be there for us when we're ready to pass the budget. Then we'll use him at that point in time, and he keeps calling us, and we're saying, hey, look, we're kicking butt right now. When you were ready to go to the vote, we'll call you. So Senator Abruzzo and I started from last year. The pickup from last year's summit was, this is what we need to do. We need to convince a nation that this is incorrect because of a toxicity. That's all we did. We didn't work on the cruelty at all. So we picked up, and I went to Europe, where I have a lovely connection with certain circumstances. We met with members of the Parliament, especially the Commission on Trade, and they were very receptive. I found out in France that one of the top riders, Dennis Lynch, a World Cup winner from Ireland, told me 300 horses a day were going to slaughter in Ireland. Well, if you put those numbers together, there becomes a problem. How many of these carcasses can be processed? It's an overload. If you take Sweden, Romania, all these other issues. So something was wrong. Where are these horses going? Because they couldn't be processed. Now, 3 months later, after that point in time in October, we were able to determine that they were being processed as food. As obviously, IKEA and Nestle have been hit very hard. These companies financially have been devastated. The percentages, Senator Abruzzo will show you that we believe 5% of every product is basically horse meat in Europe. And the quotations from officials was devastating, because 5% of horse meat in every product you're buying in Europe is too much. It's without qualification of what content it is. It's a group of countries that must make a change. So the dynamics of what's going on here is Europe is finding out that everyone, economies, and irresponsibility and lack of accountability send horses to slaughter, and we're all eating them, whether we know it or not. Even not by choice, people are eating horse meat. That was very effective in our campaign. Senator Abruzzo and I decided, what is our target? Let's make this simple. What's everyone's target? Where does everything die in Congress? In the Agricultural Committee. Everything gets passed in the House. This equine protection bill goes twice to the House and dies. It dies in the Senate. It doesn't even get to the Senate. As we know, especially all of us in this room know that Congress is pretty fractured. And I don't believe it's intentional, and I believe that there are amazing individuals in Congress, and we know that. So the answer is, instead of criticize, instead of easily, my office is 20 minutes out of D.C., believe me. You know, I have an attitude about it, but I realize I'm not going to get anywhere. So we have to work with them, find the way. Senator Abruzzo found an opportunity for me to meet the secretary one-on-one at an event in October. And it was the political year, and the secretary was coming in and supporting his president. And I had an opportunity to meet him one-on-one. That opportunity was staggering. That was the door opening. I met a secretary that I did not expect. I met a man who was honest, brutally honest, receptive, and absolutely stunning in his ability to say, Victoria, this is his quote, I inherited this. I'm going to be honest, I'm not sure what to say about it. I have committee members that all tell me what to say about it, but my own heart and soul, I don't know what to say. And I said, sir, if I provide you with some information, would you vet it and research it? And I'm not going to tell you what to think. Would you tell me what you think after that opportunity? 2 weeks later, he called Senator Abruzzo and said, okay, let's meet. And Senator Abruzzo decided, well, if we meet, what's the answer? What are we going to provide to the secretary so we don't have to leave him guessing? Well, the answer is horse meat does not belong in the Department of Agriculture because it's not eligible to become a product. It belongs in intergovernmental affairs. That is where this belongs, not as a food product. So we went through Senator Abruzzo. We met Michael Block and had a wonderful experience. We were in the West Wing and had a wonderful experience with a very receptive team. We brought wonderful documents and information from John Holland. We brought wonderful documents from Paula Bacon, fabulous footage from Sonia Meadows, a compendium, a body of evidence that was irrefutable. You could not justify the answer that we had, and they agreed. We were able to have the White House liaison to the Department of Agriculture, the White House liaison to food safety. You get those three people in a room, it's going to change. The secretary was unbelievable with Max Holzman, his ability to listen to us. And just recently, in March 21st, we got a phone call. Senator Abruzzo and I said, can you please be available for a phone conference? Yes, of course. There would be a hearing for health and food safety with the secretary, and they needed a little aid from us. We've been working very hard to provide evidence. The secretary opened the door. He opened the doorway for the truth. Instead of mires of political nonsense, a GAO report we know is fundamentally inaccurate and misleading. Of all the body of evidence the secretary has, 119 committees, he wanted to hear from us. And this secretary did listen to us, and at an hour later, he turned his complete view and spoke in favor of a third alternative, not having slaughter. He expressed the need for horses and their other purposes, for resources such as for the veterans and reusing thoroughbred horses. And he's seeking a different way, a different path. And he was very effective. Therefore, it went to the budget for the commissioners, for the senior advisors, to the commission. I was called. We were in D.C. We sat down, provided everything we could. And this document, the Department of Agriculture's budget and administration into the White House budget, has a document and it's most important, is that none of the funds made available in this act may be used to pay the salaries or expenses of personnel to inspect horses under Section 3 of the Federal Meat Inspection Act, inspect horses under Section 903 of the Federal Agricultural Improvement and Reform Act of 1996, 7 U.S.C. 1901. Note, Public Law 104-127, Unemployment or Enforced Section 352.19, Title IX Code of Federal Regulations. The other issue here is that one of the most important parts is that Title 21. Title 21 was available to us through the cattlemen. Sam Ard, the chairman of the Cattlemen's Association in Florida, said, we had a conversation with him and we said, if bute is banned in cattle and food substances are banned in their feed, is that the case with all protocol? Regulations, federal regulations, Title 21. Food, Drugs, and Food Drugs Administration, Department of Health and Human Services. Substances prohibited for use in animal feed or food for all elements, game, fish, beef, chicken. The circumstances are, how interesting that we ban all of these substances for animals grown as food. But in horses, there's nothing there. So the industry is working without any regulation whatsoever. Title 21, this document, this FDA, but it didn't crisscross the USDA. It was a cohesiveness of bringing an acceptability for, if this is what we're having to say, that in order for you to eat this product, then why is it escaping horse meat? Equines, we can't possibly prove these things. Equines would never be eligible. They're not housed in a feedlot. They're not regulated on what they're fed. We have no idea. The possibility of opening the slaughterhouse in New Mexico, yes, a site inspection was there, but the possibility for its opening and functioning and selling product to any exportation would be basically impossible because these mandatory elements from the FDA are not possible. So these things, the doorway. The doorways come from reaching out to your representatives and your senators. The doorways come from voices, from people who care and commitment. I'd like to introduce to you one of the most important people that I think for our future of our country is Senator Abruzzo.
Thank you. First off, Susan, thank you for having me back at your incredible facility and all the work you do here, your entire staff. I cannot say enough about Victoria. We were fortunate enough to meet about a decade ago when I was running for the State House, and she really opened up my eyes. I went to one of her rescues. I started to engage with some of the equine, and here, for the first time, let me take a step back. I grew up in Chicago. I moved to Florida when I was a teenager. I didn't have many horses downtown in the city, and I really, through Victoria, my eyes opened up wide, bright, wide. And I made a commitment that if I was fortunate enough to win and get to the State House, my number one issue was going to be protecting our animals. And fortunately, through a lot of hard work on Victoria's part, and many others within the state of Florida, we were able to become one of the first states to make it an automatic felony if you abuse, abandon, or neglect an equine. And in that process, I learned so much about our state, so much about how to get things done, and again, Victoria mentored me through much of the process. But I want to highlight a few key points on the bill and law that we passed, because I know many of you here are really in tune and engaged to the laws at hand. And the law is actually titled the Yvonne Rodriguez and Victoria McCullough Horse Protection Act in Florida. And it does several things just beyond what I already stated, and I want to get down into the weeds a little bit. First off, it creates 4 new horse meat for human consumption offenses: transporting, distributing, purchasing, or processing. It increases the penalties for the said offenses to an automatic third-degree felony. Authorizes the sentencing of violent career criminals, habitual violent felony offenders, and 3-time violent felony offenders of the horse meat for human consumption provision. It provides a minimum mandatory fine of $3,500 and a minimum mandatory period of incarceration of 1 year for violation of these offenses. It also, and this is important for the consumption part, authorizes the suspension of any license of any restaurant, store, or business if they sell horse meat. And it does about a dozen other things. It is very comprehensive. And Assemblyman, I know you have a big job at hand. I would love to help you any way that I can to make sure that New York State becomes another state within our union that passes something similar, or hopefully a carbon copy of what we did in Florida, because it really was groundbreaking across the nation, and I would love to work with you on it. When Victoria and I decided to head up to DC, truly brilliant in the way that Victoria wanted to tackle the issue. There, as she stated, there is obviously the humanitarian part, which we all understand, but the legislators really needed that component of facts of why this is bad for human consumption. And when we provided the information about Butte, what Victoria read in the budget from the Department of Agriculture in the White House, that clearly states the government will not provide funding for inspections of horse slaughter facilities. Therefore, you can't have a horse slaughter facility. So we put a halt on it. But we're working very hard. We're going to continue working extremely hard in D.C. to follow this through. Ultimately, would we like to see legislation passed on a federal level of what I just read you? No question about it. But an executive order that puts it in place? Absolutely. So we're going to keep working, we're going to keep fighting and making sure that we can do everything we can to ensure that our equine are protected here in America. Now, no, Victoria, I have to hand it to you in this part. We've seen press throughout the last 6 months about the world stage and how horse meat has been found in many countries in Europe. And Victoria stated 5%, and I believe that to be actually factually right now. 5% of meat throughout the entire continent of Europe, that's a lot of meat. And you hear government officials in Europe making statements on both sides of the issue, many appalled, some saying, well, you have to eat dozens of horse burgers to be affected. Well, dozens of burgers? I mean, people eat dozens of burgers. That's a concerning statement. And Victoria's work over in Europe really has brought this on the world stage. And now the people and the public are starting to recognize the serious issue with horse slaughter. Not only the humanitarian, but also the physical implications of what's going to occur if we continue down this path. You know, cattle, chickens, many of our animal lines are bred for human consumption. Horses are not. They're bred for companionship, for work, many different reasons. All this chemical is pumped into their bodies, and at the end of their life, they're not supposed to be consumed. It's dangerous to be consumed. This hit home with Washington. This hit home with the White House. This hit home with the Secretary, and that led us here to this point today. So I'm just privileged and honored to be working on such an important issue with a tremendous lady that I don't know what I would do without. But we're going to keep pushing through and keep fighting, and ultimately, hopefully, coming back again and again, delivering better and better news about how we push the ball down the field. But we're in a great spot right now, the best that I've seen in the years nationally and internationally since I started working on this issue. The job's done in Florida. Love to help you out here in New York to just get it on the book. So I'm excited about it.
Excuse me, there's one thing that the senator forgot to tell you, is that he has a tremendous relationship with individuals that are really lovely people, such as former President Bill Clinton. The senator was very helpful in opening the door and getting us a meeting with President Clinton. And the first time I met President Clinton with the senator, he was wonderful. It was at a meet and greet. He pulled me aside, and we were in a bit of trouble because he kept me there for a long time and people were angry. But he offered his total support, and we have really a total support of the Clinton Foundation. And there, as you must know, that their Clinton initiative is food safety is one of them. And this is very important. It's becoming a world stage. If you look in the New York Times, I have several articles I brought that are interesting to compare, is that if you think chemicals that you're using have been tested, you're wrong. The whole accountability of what we're eating and using and placing in our planet is becoming a focal point. I think we really have to look at it, and we're beginning to use that world stage. But the senator has doorways. We went to a fundraiser for Congressman Patrick Murphy, who's really very helpful to us because he's been 100% behind us. And we have lots of congressmen and senators that are on our side. As you know, we have very famous senators, Jim Moran, who is just will step up and do anything and jump in fire for this subject. And he offered his own home at Delaplane for rescue horses. I mean, there are really wonderful people in Congress. I'm sorry when Congress is generally lambasted, but the truth is there are some very, very fine people there. Senator Durbin has really tried very hard to do the things he can. He knows he's working in a broken Senate. These people are trying to work. In our job, we're said that's it. Let's go above Congress. Let's get this in the presidential budget. Let's get the support. Let's find this. The secretary is wonderful. The secretary is not a demon. He's unbelievable. He's a real person. He's very human and very workable. Our format now is, I know with the senator here, we're going to get this answer. It's going to happen. And a really wonderful person in this place was Dr. Dobrinsky, who is a Nobel Prize winner for being the founder of Doctors Without Borders. There's no one more helpful to me about a World Health Alert than him, because he is fundamentally one of the most extraordinary individuals in the fight of AIDS. And he is very, very helpful because this is a World Health Alert. I believe cancers are prevalent in the United States and in Europe and around the world because horse meat is basically a fact. There's a zoo in Singapore that had a major death of their big cats, their tigers. Their tigers were dying, and it's an iconic animal to them. And they couldn't figure out. They called all these veterinarians from around the world. It was the horse meat. They stopped feeding horse meat to they fed beef, and they have a change. But that's significant. It's really significant when IKEA and Nestle are harmed financially, because who runs votes? Contributors. Major contributors and corporations are very politically savvy. And these people are harmed is financially as staggering as 47%. This is a world stage. The stage is for us now. And all of you have a voice. And I learned in this room last year that everyone in this room gives us the way to go forward. It's right around the corner. It's right here. And we're going to get it.
I just wanted to briefly point out, as you see, Victoria and I, we have a plan. We have a plan at the state level, at the federal level, and Victoria on the world stage, and it is working. And Assemblyman, I have to tell you, I understand the numbers you're dealing with. I believe on the other side of the aisle with you, but when I started and got this bill done, there were 81 of the other side, 39 of our side. So, you know, it can be done. The cattlemen, this is key, because believe it or not, they are losing business. They do not want people to stop eating meat, and every time there's an epidemic over horse meat, their sales go down. So I've found that they've been an ally on this.
We're going to take some questions, but I just have to say one thing. In addition to great people like the Secretary and Bill Clinton, Robert Redford has come on board. And you know, he's not only one of our finest actors and directors, but he's a great American. And he doesn't jump on every cause, but he came to the rescue, and his comments have been all over the media, including in the New York Times, and a copy of the letter that he wrote to us because of this summit are in your press kits. Robert Redford is going to be an ally in this. So